with our work session related to the fire department, and I just want to preface it by letting council members know I attended the Lawrence Township meeting yesterday, and brought it up to them that their agreement with the firefighters and the pay raises that they got, basically 35% for the majority of their firefighters, an increase in pay based on their longevity with the Lawrence Township Fire Department, and just that it's going to have an impact on us and our ability to keep pace with that, I guess, and also having concerns around the idea that with their language or lack of language for what constitutes longevity, a year of service, there's nothing spelled out in their agreement, and I haven't seen their agreement, I just understand it, and that's what I asked them about. So essentially, if a firefighter works for them for 50 hours in a year, that would constitute a year's worth of service and enable them to be paid either anywhere from $1 to $5 more per hour that they work over the last 5 years. So that was a concern, but probably the bigger issue for us is, I think it's one of the best bargains in government, the fire departments that we have, without a doubt, and the service that they provide is top-notch. Our residents are very happy with the service that's being provided. Unfortunately, sometimes it's becomes a decision about having two different masters, where you have one department who has one leadership style, and our model is a little bit different in that our fire chief is available full-time to us. He doesn't serve outside of the city, and he doesn't get paid to staff or to fill shifts, and so I like that model. Their model is different, where their chief gets paid a stipend and then gets paid additional hours and fills shifts. So that's one essential difference. And so with that being said, it's just kind of time to turn it over and talk about our agreement. And I'm going to turn it over to Chief Durkee and tell us what we need to know.
Okay, well, I just put together this pamphlet here on Canal Futon Fire Department and wages and some different aspects of that. So hopefully that'll answer a lot of questions as we go along, and maybe give some rationale, even some rationale to what Lawrence Township did. First of all, recruitment and retention. It's a problem nationwide. Pennsylvania, which has always had a host of volunteers and a lot of history, a lot of pride in their volunteers. I'm up reading something almost every day about how they're having problems of maintaining people. Part of that is, one of those second things there is people go and they get their initial training and then they have to provide continuing education and stuff like that. And 30, 40, 50 years ago, that wasn't necessarily the case, or at least not the volume of continuing education that people have to do nowadays. And a lot of that initial training was provided by the fire departments. When I hired on my initial job, I had no fire training, and I was trained to be a firefighter, then an EMT, and then a paramedic at the city's cost. So on the next page is just an area wage comparison, and as you can see, I averaged it out, and there's average all and average less Canal Fulton, so you can look at that two different ways. But the range is anywhere from $12 in North Lawrence to $23.08 in Fairlawn. And the average overall is $16.89. If you take it Canal Fulton out, the average is $17.88 an hour. And what's happening in Lawrence Township is causing some ripple effect. We're getting calls from other fire departments that are doing wage studies and things like that, so those wages are probably going to go up largely across the board as well. I'm sorry about this next page, but it's kind of difficult to see. It was supposed to be in color, but I was having difficulty printing in color, so I'll try to explain that. Basically, in 2013, we had slightly higher pay than a part-time police officer just starting out. But over time, we didn't, the part-time police officers get a longevity pay, the firefighters don't. So in 2019, a one-year firefighter, or a one-year police officer is making 3.4% more than an initial firefighter. In 2 years, a two-year police officer is making 11% more, and a three-year firefighter or police officer is making 18.6% more. The next 3 pages is just letting you know where Lawrence Township is as far as I understand their agreement. They've given raises first of all, so they've raised the rate to $15 an hour for their paramedic firefighters, and our rate is $14.79. Then on the next page, it just kind of explains some other incentives. Officer in charge gets $2 per hour. Right now, we're giving $1 an hour for our officer in charge. Fire inspection pays $1 as an additional $1 per hour for a person doing that. And then there's longevity pay for each year. $1 for the first year, $2 for the second, $3 for the third, fourth, and max is at $5. And then the next page just gives you pretty much what the maximum would be for those different classifications to reach their full pay at 5 years.
Can I interrupt you for a second?
Yes, you can.
Now, wasn't this something that both departments got together with each other and discussed this to keep in uniform with each other over the years, several years?
Traditionally, that's the way things have been done. What happened this year was, I believe Chief Stewart kind of intimated to me what his plan was. Then my official notification was him standing in my doorway saying that we're gonna give increases at 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, 4 year, and 5 year. And I misunderstood that. I thought that was going to be over a period, next year they would go up a year, and the next year 2 years, the next year 3 years. I did not understand it to be a longevity increase, so I misunderstood.
Which was retroactive.
And as it turns out, it's retroactive as well, yes.
So what was his plan in order that made him wanna do this without getting together with you guys under the same roof and everybody keeping?
I can't answer for Chief Stewart.
There's,
And I would think, in all honesty, there's probably a difference of opinion on, when we voted to hire 18-year-olds into service in our department. We voted as a council to do that, and I think that was probably something that they felt like was something that they weren't in agreement to. So there's some.
there's a huge difference between the two. Getting some younger, soon-to-be firefighters to get some driving training versus a ton of money and more unequalness under the same roof. So
we discussed an open session for months, and I know I had discussions, and I know Mr. Schwab had discussions with at least one trustee about it. Of course, I know Schwab's opinion on it, but, so it wasn't like it was, we did it, we had a secret meeting and came out with a decision, so.
We weren't here then, that was.
No, we were here.
Part of this has been going on for a long time before we were even on council.
yeah, the driving part had.
It might, yeah, it might have been,
Yeah.
yeah.
But I just,
Where does North Lawrence stand in all this?
Other than their wages, I'm not entirely sure, and their wages are probably the lowest, I think.
Well, yeah, I see that.
$12 an hour.
But
They're
are they still?
They're still operating under their contract with the township. And I don't know when they renegotiate that or when it comes up, but as far as it stands right now, they're still operating under their existing contract.
So they contract with you guys?
No, they
and
contract with Lawrence Township.
North Lawrence does.
North Lawrence contracts with Lawrence Township?
Correct.
Correct.
Right. And their part-time paramedic firefighter right now is being paid $12 an hour?
That's my understanding, yes.
And Lawrence Township's is being paid $20 an hour?
If they have 5 years.
They have 5 years service.
longevity.
5 years longevity. What about North Lawrence? What's their highest, I mean, they don't do the longevity then?
Not that we're aware
No.
of.
So where's the gap? Where's the gap between us and Lawrence Township? I mean, I tried to find a copy of my resolution of our wages versus their wages. I couldn't find it. I mean, for like the chief and all that. wanted
I don't have a copy
see.
of theirs, but on the back, last page, there's a copy of our current payroll ordinance.
Oh,
You might need
Duh.
you might need a magnifying glass to see that, but.
Well, it doesn't give an hourly rate, it's giving you an annual.
$14.79 is what we're paying our firefighter paramedics an hour.
I see.
Okay, if I can continue on?
Yes,
The
go
next-
ahead.
The next page, as somebody was alluding to, the value of our part-time service. The first, what you see there is a cost of a comparable 3 platoon shift with 4-person staffing for 24 hours. And it really doesn't take into account quite everything. There's a few things that could have been added into there, like vacation and things like that. But it does include the average Ohio firefighter salary, the state pension contribution, and also the Medicaid contribution. And for 4 firefighters around the clock would cost about $1,084,117. Now, the cost equivalent for that type of staffing of what we're doing now, and again, this is just staffing, this does not include training and things like that, is $559,441. So that's the monetary volume. The next page is
What was
just,
our total for last year, do you know? Is this your amount, 559,441?
that's between both departments there. So we are somewhere at half of that, probably a little bit less.
What do you think that we covered? I know how you switch off, but do you think that they covered 60% compared to our 40, or where do you think that our hours were
Our hour,
this past year? How many shifts did we cover compared to them?
It's 50/50.
Is it 50/50?
Yeah.
we were a little late getting into the game, putting a 4th person on at night, so,
Their cost would be a little bit
their
higher.
cost would be a
than
little
ours.
bit higher, right?
Yeah.
Do you know what we spent last year? I know you don't have these figures in front of you. On the total fire department with supplies, material, electric, fuel, what are
$591,540.07.
591 what?
$591,540.07.
How much of that was personnel?
The wages was 347,000. Let me add up all the benefits.
That's not including any capital items like the truck or anything?
No.
So roughly, if you're saying 347 in wages, would you be comfortable enough to think that additional 400,000 in your budget would be able to staff your department full-time based on the current 2018 salaries?
It sounds reasonable to me, but
If you're covering 50/50 shifts, plus you would be able to get that revenue from the EMS building, which you would think, how much would that be, 125,000 maybe?
I don't know if it would be that much. I've done, a napkin sketch of what I think that would be. I think it would be an increase of about $30,000.
That's all, 30,000?
We're doing about 120,000 right now, but we're also splitting, calls with the township. So, they are benefiting from that by, we run almost 2-to-1 calls in the city. So if you extrapolate that out, I believe that would be a $30,000 swing to the city.
I don't have it broken down by incident type, but I was trying to do that today, but our reporting software is not the most user-friendly. But last year,
Software.
last year Lawrence Township ran 409 calls in the city, so when they were on duty. So probably 80% of those were EMS runs, on average, chief, I think.
either EMS runs or service
Service
calls.
calls. So whatever they collected on calls they ran in the city, when they did the transport, they collect that ambulance revenue.
Right, are they using the same billing, Ohio billing?
No, they're not.
And
Is there a
then,
way to break that down and see, I mean, obviously, we could probably ask them for a public records request of how much they receive for doing our calls in our city, but.
but
they-
I mean, I
also,
could get you the number of runs, of EMS runs, but I
But not
wouldn't
the
be able to tell,
billing,
right.
yeah.
and then as far as the billing for the Red Center dispatch calls, we're paying 100% of that cost regardless.
For the city, we're paying, for every call that's dispatched geographically in the city, we're paying $50 per call. And, we're only running half of those rather than all of them.
So when
Seems
you
like
take
they
this
should-
409 calls in the city last year that Lawrence Township responded to, we're getting billed for $50 on each one of those?
If they ran 409 calls in the city, yes.
It seems like if they collect the EMS revenue, they should pay for that call, for the dispatch.
And likewise, we do run some calls in Lawrence Township, and again, like I say, it's 2-to-1, nearly 2-to-1, and so we would have to reimburse them like.
We ran 244 calls in the township last year.
Being that we're a little bit new to this, what's going on with the fire department, Bonnie and I'll speak for myself, so. Okay.
I'm right there with you.
Does, since they use our fire department, do they pay rent? Do
No.
they cover anything? Do they, is this?
They pay income tax to us, but that's it.
Okay.
It's in the agreement, like, as I understand it, that.
I never got a copy of the agreement, so I don't know, that's why I'm asking. I'm
Should be
Right.
at your, should be at your place.
That's item 2 in the agreement.
Okay. I didn't know I had it, sorry.
Do you have an average, chief, of, you know, say 80% of those, those 400 calls, the EMS calls, about what ratio of those involve transport? Maybe half of those
I
calls?
don't have that, the only thing I have is, like I said, the back of the napkin figuring that I did.
We can get that, we can get the number of
That was
transports.
just extrapolating out from what we know that we transport and just running some figures and figuring what that might be if we would transport our nearly 2/3 transports.
Well, we start charging them to use our station, and we'd have enough money to pay for your raises.
Okay. So we cover everything except their cell phone bills?
Cover everything of theirs but their cell phone bills?
Yes.
No, we don't. We split the cost of our EMS supplies. We split the cost of some of the station supplies. They provide a printer copier, at least at the time. So we don't provide quite everything.
But obviously not a color printer, right?
Well, it is, but I've got a new computer and
That
I'm
was
not.
my one joke for the night.
I've got a new computer and I haven't been able to connect to it, so.
I know.
I recall a while back when we were given our fire department raises and the township couldn't afford to do what we were
match.
doing. To match. Where did they get this money?
I'm not
I
entirely.
mean, where did this all, for this big variance, how did they afford that?
They just passed levies, and they were replacement levies, so.
And they both,
That, I
they
think,
passed.
yeah, they both passed, and I think, I'm not sure whether this was, road and fire or not, just trying to think back to the news release, but it was, I wanna say that the cost of every $100,000 worth of valuation was $37 more, per resident homeowner.
So that levy just recently passed.
That
you're saying.
levy
So
just-
the levy passed while they're sharing while we're sharing together,
Mhm.
and so the levy money, the verbiage must have been for specifically just wages. I don't
Or
know,
is this
or
fire service, is there an
Operating,
operation
you know,
capital?
for fire,
Yeah, is there fire
because-
Either
level?
party may terminate this agreement.
So they replaced the levy at the current valuation, which is a big, huge increase in taxes.
Yeah. So, you know, everyone was screaming about their valuations going up this year with the auditor. So you had a combination of increased valuation and replace millage. And, you know, so you can renew millage at the, which only produces the same amount of revenue, or you can replace it, which, you know, basically increases revenue. And that's what they did. So they're, you know, and I think they were probably, you know, the residents knew what it was for. And they voted for it, so, and passed a road levy as well.
You know, they may not have recognized the increase. They saw the word replacement, didn't recognize the big increase.
Do you know, does anybody know what their impact on their personnel budget would be on this increase that they're doing? How much it's gonna cost them?
I've heard just estimates of $60,000.
60.
And I think Chief and I looked at it, you know, realistically, you know, trying to see if we could keep pace with that. And budget-wise, you know, using the hours and the personnel who filled those shifts this year, that's where we came up with the $60,000, if everything stayed the same. For budget purposes, I think you need to figure on worst-case scenario where everybody who fills every shift is gonna be that 5-year, paramedic. And that's gonna be closer to 90,000 plus, FICA, cost on there, so.
So have we done a comparable, I mean, has there been a comparable done on what they've done to what it would be for us? What kind of an increase?
We'd
Is that-
probably be looking at the same thing, 60 to 90,000.
60 to 90,000 a year.
Where 60 would be, you know, if someone filled the shift at the same pay rate they did last year, and all that stayed the same. Worst case scenario would be if the, you know, all you filled it with was people at the top of the pay scale, with all the longevity service.
If I can continue with my packet?
Sure, sorry.
The next page just shows the incident volume over the past 5 years, and we actually had a little slight downtick this year. And maybe one of the things I can attribute that to is, it doesn't seem like we've run as many overdoses as we've had in the past couple of years.
That's good news.
So, that's my guess on that. I haven't run the statistics on that. The next page is just some conclusions of what all this says. The average area, part-time firefighter pay is about $17.88 per hour. Lawrence Township base pay is $15 per hour plus their $20 per hour 5-year longevity. And, just the comparable to the police, a 3-year police officer is earning 18% more than a 3-year firefighter, paramedic would be.
I need to back up the bus on that one, maybe Chief Swartz can help us, or Mr. Rouse. Do we have some kind of index for part-time firefighters then?
Police officers?
Police officers, huh?
No, I
Thank you.
think they generally just fall under the non-bargaining pay raises that are issued across the board.
Yeah, there's a 3-year index, but then after that, it's basically they just get the 2% that non-bargaining
Okay,
get.
so when Chief's talking about we do have an index for years of service for part-time police officers.
1, 2, and 3.
1, 2, and 3, and we don't have any criteria on how many hours they have to serve to equal that?
No,
Okay, which is surprising to me.
just less than, obviously.
How many part-time police officers do you have now, presently?
2.
What's their years of service? How long have they been here?
One's brand new and the other one is somewhere around 10 years.
Okay, next page just kind of summarizes this joint staffing agreement. Started May 30th, 1997, 2 personnel staffing, 6 A to 6 PM at $8 an hour. First Amendment established 3 personnel staffing, pay established at $9.36. Second Amendment, February 4th, 2002, increases pay rate to $10.86 an hour. Third Amendment, October 8th, 2007, begins EMS billing agreement. Fourth Amendment, February 2nd, 2010, establishes 24-hour staffing and provides time and 1/2 pay for 6 holidays. And the Fifth Amendment establishes a living together arrangement. And the last page, if you got your magnifying glass, is our current pay ordinance.
When was this, last,
617 is the payroll ordinance number, and I think it was probably, maybe within a month of that, of June 17. Actually, I think it was April. It was just assigned 617, it was April.
so all these amendments, there was like collaboration with the township on?
Yes, they were agreed to in the amendments. But we have done pay raises that we agreed to, but we did not make amendments for.
Do you know what the difference is of what would precipitate the amendment, the need for amendments versus when we don't have amendments, were we just both doing our own thing at that time?
No, we'd still meet with them and then agree to a salary increase. I think these amendments were more formalized with, if you look at it, certain topics were addressed.
Yeah, more
Whether it's
than
billing
wages.
or 24-hour staffing or the.
And most of the amendments were, like when the program first started out, it was just Monday through Friday, 6 A to 6 P. And we added 6 A to midnight, and we added weekends. And it was just, most of the members gradually adding the hours that were staffed and the number of people staffing.
Yeah,
And that was all agreed upon between both entities.
yeah. And like, I just wanna reiterate how grateful I am as a resident, that I wasn't the mayor at the time, but just as a resident, and, especially from a real estate perspective, when you're trying to explain services to people who are considering Canal Fulton, to be able to say, I remember their reaction when, you told them, from 6 AM to 6 PM, you have someone right there at the station to come and give you service. But after 6 PM, they have to come from their home to their house, and, so that has been a big benefit, I think, in
These,
providing services.
I don't mean to interrupt.
Yep.
These rates that we're looking at, that does it does not include like the chief and all that?
No.
That's chief and their captains and all that, and that's not in part of this scenario, is that correct?
When you're looking at our payroll ordinance, and you're saying they, so I'm just wanna make sure we're talking the same thing.
It's
We
in there.
are,
Chief's in there.
pardon me?
Right,
Yeah, the chief is in there.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
now this is their information, correct?
Right.
Right,
So as it stands,
okay.
their captain, who has 5 years of service, makes $31 an hour.
How about the chief?
He has a stipend, but then he's paid,
$13,795 a year.
but he's also paid to cover shifts at the rate of $20 an hour because he's a paramedic and has over 5 years of service with the township.
All right, does he, and on lack of a better term, double dip as far as, if his hours as chief overlap with his hours as filling shifts, or
I can't answer that.
you don't know that? Okay.
Do we have any, full-time employees here at the city anymore that, also work part-time for the fire department maybe, like we did at one time?
No.
We do not as of yet.
I was just curious.
But we have one person that works with the service department that he's expressed interest of making himself available during the days that could operate a pump or something like that.
Because, I was just kinda made aware that when you have a full-time employee in a service department or whatever, and then they also work as a part-time firefighter, anything done over and above, depending on how it's set up, anything above the 40-hour work week, you've gotta pay that, the hours of the firefighter position overtime, which
That's my understanding of the way the Fair Labor Standards Act.
Oh, yeah,
addresses it,
right,
that if you-
right.
If you work for the same employer.
right, and same employer,
In two different positions.
Right.
Then you may be subject to overtime.
right. I just wondered if we had anybody in that situation here again like we did before.
Well, how would that work if the individual is making, say, arbitrary numbers, he's making $18 an hour, and he goes and answers a fire call at $14.76 an hour?
No, you wouldn't be able to. If he worked his 40-hour work week, you'd have to pay him $27 an hour.
But we're talking about him coming, serving during work hours.
No, I think it would be
I
after
mean,
work
that's
hours.
what I understood. While he was here, he would be on.
Well, those are details that
Yeah,
are not
anything over
germane to
40
this
hours a
meeting.
week
Yeah,
of service,
Yeah.
it's gotta be overtime.
I mean, if that happens, we
I
can
just-
look at that.
Yeah, right.
Well, my opinion is you do need a raise. My opinion, I would not wanna vote for to give you $1 an hour like they did, because that's kinda defeating the purpose of bringing new guys in. You're rewarding the senior guys, which I don't have a problem rewarding senior guys, but they're the ones that are then gonna cover all the shifts, and then because it's more lucrative to be on shift and making $20 an hour compared to a younger guy that's only gonna be making, what is he, at $14.79, he's gonna have less incentive, he can go to a Subway and probably make 10. But, I don't see a problem, this is just my thought, to try to get you up to $16.89, the average would put you in the top 8 of that whole fire department part-time wage comparison. That would put you in the top 8 category. And that's a $2.10 increase, which is pretty expensive. I'd have to look at to see what that's gonna cost the city, but I definitely think that, there's definitely a need, in my opinion, of getting that up there, but, I don't really follow the model of Lawrence Township with, $1 per year. It's just my opinion.
I've always thought they needed more money.
Yeah, I'm not begrudging anybody. For me, it's just, the reality is, in 2018, the majority of their staff worked for one rate. This year, as of January 1st, they're making 35% more. And there's,
Yes, and I think something has to be done with the living quarters as well, doing something about that. Because this contract's only good for a year. It was signed in 2013, so.
It was designed to be a temporary contract to see if it was gonna be pushed forward.
I mean,
And I think that letting them
I just don't
utilize
think
the
it's right.
station for free, and our taxpayers are paying for that building and the
Still.
maintenance of it.
Yeah. And after all these years of working cohesively and deciding together on things like issues like this, and now all of a sudden just doing their own thing, I think that something needs to be done. And not over the next 6 years like now.
I know this is one of the hot topics, but I'd also like to bring one other thing forward for council. The last time that I came to council for a raise, to kind of negotiate a raise, one of the things that I put forth was that council needs to consider who the next person's gonna be and to have an attractive wage. Also, at that time, my wage was based on 20 hours a week. And right now, between this issue, between radio issues, between truck issues, I'm sure I'm well over the excess of that. So I just ask that as you're considering these things, you also consider what the fire chief would be paid for his services. The mayor has even referred to almost having a full-time fire chief. Back in 2011, I'd take a couple days off to go ride my bike or something like that, and I can't do that anymore. So I just also want to present that to council as well.
It's terrible.
doesn't wreck on his.
Yeah, his bike's in good shape.
I've got a couple broken bones for my bike.
Alright, so, I guess the direction you guys are giving us is to, put some models together on, you know, what it's gonna cost us, and then also how we're gonna create revenue to cover that expense.
Yeah, and I think it's about time that we do something about the sharing of the building. I mean, this is.
Well, that's what I'm talking about,
Yeah.
creating
It's-
revenue.
It's been kicked around, you know, way well before when I was here, and it's been a heated thing over the past year, so let's take care of this.
Is the fire district a complete non-starter now? Is that dead?
It is pretty much sputtered, from what I understand. At one of the last meetings that we had, one of the comments that I remember that was said is if it's gonna cost us this much to form a fire district, then let's just do our own thing.
That would be me.
Well, I was gonna throw anybody under the bus, but it wasn't you.
It just seems like, you know, with the fire district, we're giving up control, of our city fire department. And you create a new taxing entity that can go to the voters and, whatever the majority decides, that's what everybody lives with. And, you know, the 18-year-olds are a good example, where you get one side wants one model and the other side wants another model, and it's hard to serve two masters, and that's where we're at, so.
And we've had other violations of this agreement that are personnel issues that probably need to be discussed in an executive session if we ever come to that, but.
Well, why don't we have one and then discuss them so we can better move
Or
forward
that
with all this?
You wanna bring that up now, or
I'm not sure what you're referring to, but,
the hiring practices?
oh, okay.
Yeah, I've heard about those also.
I have, yeah, so I'd like to hear
I
about
am.
it.
Yeah, I don't think that there's any big secret, it's the concept of the model when we started was that we were both going to hire the same people, and
That hasn't happened.
that hasn't happened. There's been some people that we hired that they didn't, and then the shoe went on the other foot.
No, we have hired,
There may have been people that we have hired that I might have foregone, had I not been under the impression that we were to hire the same personnel.
I got you.
and there was folks from our department that applied to the township that were not hired.
So the same person
But
that
they were
comes on
they were
new,
Over 21 too, right? Correct. And I could understand if it's someone who's 18 or 19 or 20.
Correct.
That's their policy, so.
so the person, a new fire official,
When we started the living together agreement.
they came on new, they were gonna be mutually,
Mm-hmm.
Hired.
hired.
And they were not.
So when we swear firefighters in, typically, you know, I'll go to a Lawrence Township meeting and they'll either have already been sworn in or they'll swear them in as firefighters and hire them there after we hire them, or vice versa. And what, Assistant Chief Green's talking about is, has not been happening for a period of how long would you say?
2-3 years.
Why is it supposed to happen, so they can use either equipment?
So they can
or-
work, yeah, so they can operate the other department's equipment, in the event of emergency.
Is
And-
that in our agreement here?
Yes.
Well, you
So-
also have, you know, we have two contracts that I have. You know, the initial shared services agreement and the Fourth Amendment, which they both, well, the one talks about it. But this Fifth Amendment does not supersede the previous one, it adds to it. So you gotta go back to all the agreements for a cohesive, you know,
And prior to us,
series of what's going on.
prior to us keeping both Canal Futon ambulances in the station, they were on a rotation to save wear and tear on the
Right.
vehicles. Well, we ran into a situation where we had one Canal Futon ambulance in the building and it left on a call. Second call come in, there was only Lawrence Township vehicles in the station, and the two firefighter EMTs that were there that could have responded were not able to take those vehicles because they belong to Lawrence Township and they weren't permitted to drive Lawrence Township vehicles.
Is that because
Because
they
they
were
weren't hired
18
by
or
them.
because?
Correct. Both, one was 18, the other one was not hired by the township, so they responded in an SUV and called the mutual aid department to take the transport.
Oh, that's not good.
It seems
Not
like
at all.
our, you and Mr. Cozy need to have a meeting with the trustees. I mean, sit-down meeting, say, what's going on? Cause, I mean, this has been going on for how many years now? They're violating the agreement. That's the way I
Yeah.
mean, plain and simple. And, you know, if it's just if it's a power thing, if it's a, you know, we'll show you, or this is the way we wanna do it thing, and we're not gonna go along with the program, well, they're adults. Follow the rules, follow the program. You know, we're serving our public, we're serving our communities. This isn't a time to play games with anything.
Not when lives are at stake, that's ridiculous.
We just, you know,
It
why
really
not?
should have been addressed
Right,
as soon as, when you first discovered it, that would have been an issue, really.
Well, it was brought to the powers to be, and not this
Yeah, and
group,
nothing's
but-
happened.
Correct.
So, I mean, it's something that wasn't really foreseen,
No.
because it couldn't have been, because, you know, we had that, arrangement, so.
well, you know, you leave people in a station, and there's equipment sitting there, and they can't get in it if they need it, and someone needs it,
Well, my question would be,
I,
why is that
that just
equipment there?
really makes me mad.
What's it there for?
I'm
exactly?
sorry.
Yeah, well, that's, like I said, it should have been brought up when it first was
Yes.
discovered, but.
That's
it definitely
politics.
wouldn't move forward
That's
without having that
politics,
conversation.
and that has no business in service to the people. That's politics.
Yeah.
That's wrong.
Both our ambulances are in our station now.
Yes.
That's wrong.
So,
Our side doesn't play those same games, do they?
No.
Okay. Just-
We put the
Just thought I
public
better
first.
ask that before,
Well-
you know.
so if it was
they
just
have any
Canal
reasoning
Fulton Fire
behind it?
Department in that building, would that be enough to take care of the city? What would be needed extra?
Well,
Just, let's just say, magically, let's just say they disappeared overnight.
Well, they hadn't
And
been
tomorrow
there
morning,
for a
it's just the
while.
Canal Fulton Fire Department, what would you guys need to get the job done? I
Pretty
mean,
much just
vehicle wise, people wise?
Just adequate staffing, and certainly there are some vehicles that we would need going forward, but we would need those anyway.
But you could survive right now and do the job with the vehicles that you have, it would just be a
Your
matter of.
salary cost would double, right, cause if you're staffing the same, 24 hours. instead of-
$347,000 is what we spent last year in wages. So that's why Scott, I think, threw out the $400,000 with a competitive pay raise, not 35%, but a competitive pay raise, and going up from 347,000 to another 400,000 to staff those other shifts that right now Lawrence Township staffs. Because we take turns back and forth.
All right. That's how we did for years, on, off.
Since 1997.
Has anybody
Yeah.
asked them why they doing this with the raise and everything? I mean, do they have a reason for it? Did they say?
I think there's
The big
just a
jump.
sentiment that they're going their own direction.
So they want to anyway.
I think the raise is warranted. Yeah, I mean, I think the evidence shows that it is. I think the issue is there was no collaboration.
Like it's supposed to be, right?
That's a show of respect to the other
Of
party.
course, yeah.
And,
Since that's the way it's
disrespect
always
on
been.
that issue.
I would disagree with Chief when you talk about going up to, Copley, Fairlawn, and then Lawrence Township, you would be the third highest department pay-wise. You know, you'd be ahead of Norton, Uniontown, Wadsworth, Louisville, Brewster, Jackson. Jackson Township's at $16.23 an hour.
That's a
Chippewa
surprise.
1604.
Mhm.
Jackson.
Yeah.
And their part-timers do not function as paramedics. Even though they may be certified, it's a union issue there that their paramedics don't, that their part-timers do not function as paramedics.
You know, outside of all these other townships that have other taxes and big fire departments and blah, 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 what can we do to make things work and cohesive in the fire department? How do we build up our fire department, take care of these guys, and get all the shenanigans out of the house? I mean, that's basically the bottom
That's
line.
what
It doesn't
we
matter
need.
what Jackson's doing. I care less about Richmond. I don't care what number we fall in the top 20. But if we can give our fire department guys, you know, a
they
decent enough
deserve,
raise,
right.
raise what they deserve, and fix all the BS that's going on down there at the fire department, that's what we need to focus on, not how much Coventry Fire Department.
Well, if the fire department personnel are being given orders by higher up, that, you know, the trustees are not hiring the way they're supposed, like the agreement lays.
I
you know.
don't think it's the trustees.
Oh,
I'll just
well,
leave it at that.
all right, well, whoever's making that decision not to hire and not to make things on an even keel or whatever they're supposed to be doing, then that needs to be addressed. If
It's
it's,
not political.
but the trustees are over their own, they're over their
Right.
staff, so at least they need to sit down with their staff and say, why have you made this decision to not do this based on the agreement that we signed with the trustees? You know, we signed this with the trustees.
I really think that we need to get a list of all the things in the contract that are not being, adhered to, and then have a party meet with them and see what the heck's really going on there. Cause this is ridiculous.
Just one thing I would say is if we were to go on our own and our salary costs did truly double, and we add another 400,000 to the operating costs of the fire department, then you would have to pass another levy, to fund that. I mean, our entire capital budget from income tax was 350,000, so you would have to wipe that out and then lay people off or something else in other areas to make up another 400 to put towards.
And that's why I was asking, what would it take?
So you would have
Really
to pass a
double.
levy to do it.
It may not be double, but.
But then you'd have, why you increasing our property taxes? Why don't you just all get along and do what you're supposed to be doing instead of raising our taxes? Then you'll hear that from your
Right.
constituents, and that's
Which is
gonna
why
be something that we can't.
We benefit working together.
So you still, I mean, you still have to start at the top and go
Right,
and
right.
meet and give them a list of, hey,
Right.
we have to
Sometimes, you
continue
know,
to the
taking your
contract.
toys and going home, it's gonna cost you, and you can't just pick up and
I
go
agree.
home.
That's why I said a
Right.
meeting would be
Right.
most beneficial first, just to see
Right.
what's going on.
Right,
I just don't understand where this animosity comes from, and I'm sure this is probably a rhetorical question, but why can't the city and township just work together in any fashion? I mean, it seems like,
Agreed.
This has been.
it's
this
like the
ha-
Hatfields and McCoys.
I mean, I
It's
feel
been
like we're in
that for
Congress and
years.
the Democrats and Republicans are trying to
Well.
work together and they
Don't
can't do
even-
it.
don't even
And this
go
is
there.
like, this is small scale stuff. How hard is it to work together? Why are we not meeting more regularly with the trustees, getting together with the township and working on some of these issues together? Instead of coming here, we all knew we were gonna be talking about this. There's nobody from the township that's, I don't know if they weren't invited or what. We need to start working together again.
It is the best bargain in government, and I've said that for a lot of years, so.
Collaboration,
It's duplicating
Get along.
services.
for the good of the people
I mean,
that you
the people
serve.
still have to be paid what they're worth too.
Well, one of the things, my perception is, something that would help be more collaborative would be on equal footing, and I think that especially with the Lawrence Township passing their replacement levies, and I think it was like a $60,000 additional increase for them, I think we're on unequal footing, so there's still something that needs to be addressed there as far as financial.
Absolutely.
All right, I'll schedule a meeting and, get back to you.
Think we get an exact number of what we'd be looking at in addition to by increasing, giving them an increase?
To the
Just stay together.
1689 that Scott suggested, or I'm not sure, what price tag do you want me to go
I
to?
mean, do a couple examples, put us right there dead even with with Lawrence Township and maybe go a little bit lower. I mean, give us some different examples, different things to at least go by and look at. So we have more of an exact number than, between 60 and 90,000.
That's pretty
I
accurate.
mean, that's the number.
Yeah.
That is
It
the
just
number.
depends
Yeah.
on who the staffing number, what seniority the staff that are
And you
making
could make
it
that,
up.
could you make that work?
No, thank you. No, I can't. So, you would have to tell me what we're cutting to make it work. I can give you options of what we could cut, but there would definitely be cuts.
Can we change the agreement and start charging Lawrence Township to use our facility?
Yes, after 6 months' notice.
I mean, can we do a sixth amendment and, hey, we're charging you room and board now?
But they don't follow the rules.
Yeah, I mean,
That could get brought up in your meeting.
that would be a huge tool to help us.
Right. I think, and that's what Mr. Rouse was talking about, and anything we do that impacts our budget,
Right.
administratively, we try to look and see how are we gonna pay for it.
Okay, so rather than raising our taxes, we're letting them use our facilities. Make them rent it from us.
Right.
Give them a rent, give them a lease agreement. A yearly lease agreement.
Okay? Sounds like you're telling me to go negotiate,
Go negotiate, Mr. Mayor.
okay?
What's our annual, price we pay on our bond issue rate? Well, I-
55,000?
Oh, you know what? Go ahead, talk amongst yourselves.
About 55.
No, I think it's,
Thought it was higher than that,
yeah, I think it's more than.
120,000 a year, I think.
Yeah, that's
That
what
was
I was
2 bond
thinking.
issues.
It's the two bonds.
That's right,
Yeah.
split it.
So if the departments were hypothetically to split, well, how would that affect our response time for our citizens? It wouldn't.
We have people in the station just like we do now.
Nothing would
No,
really change.
if the crew is tied up, yeah, either we're,
We'd still continue with mutual aid,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Right.
I mean, we still have it with the surrounding communities, not
Correct.
alone, not just
We're gonna be,
Township, right.
from what we're doing with, the building down on Locust Net, we're gonna be a growing community with more people and more bodies, more need.
Yeah.
Why don't
Right
we
now,
set-
we're at
why-
about 3.8 calls per day, chief.
3.8, yep.
Okay.
Why don't we just set the meeting with all the city council present and them, and let's all do this together? We won't send you into the fire alone.
Good either way.
I mean, it'd be a good,
I'd
I'd like to
yeah.
learn and hear
I'd like
more
to be there,
from.
really.
Okay.
The bond payment's 117,000 this year.
No, but I know that.
And that,
Yeah.
Half of it would
that
be
is
there.
split,
Yeah.
Bill,
To have a joint meeting.
is
We
that
had a
part
couple
for the
before you
fire
guys were here.
department and part for the police department?
Entirely fire.
That's just because the police department was already there, right?
Yeah.
And then all that millage is just for the fire station.
Mm-hmm.
And we probably have, what, 7 more years now for,
Yes.
okay, 7 more years of $117,000 a year.
And then we lose the levy though too, so we don't really gain anything by the debt being paid off, we don't lose anything, it just, we own a building now.
Yep. All righty. I will see if I can set up a big powwow.
Yeah.
All right.
What was the millage, how many mills?
Anybody else have any comments?
for the fire station,
Which, to the fire
It
station?
was just 2. 1.5.
1.5.
God bless you.
Should've asked for 2. Remember that discussion?
Let's go for 2.
All right. We'll take a break before the regular meeting starts in 5 minutes. Thank you.
Why not?